Henry Fernandez, CEO and Chairman of MSCI. Welcome to Bloomberg, sir.
Thanks for having me.
It's a moment, isn't it, for the Tadawul and yourselves? I think the words that you used were an expansion and a deepening of the relationship. How important is this new index and the movement into 2019?
It was critically important for the development of the Tadawul because, they're going from just being a cash market with all the new reforms in stock lending and short selling and all of that to now opening up the derivatives markets. And therefore, that's a big jump and a very important jump, obviously starting with the listed futures. So we have been working with them for some time now to design an index that will be helpful to them in the local market with local investors, but also linking it to global investors, which are followers of MSCI indices.
So this is really, I suppose, deepening the marriage, the inclusion of Saudi into the MSCI. So it's a deepening of that relationship. Can I ask you, the institutional investors, where has that demand come from and how big can it get?
Well, institutional investors in emerging markets worldwide are now very much focused on Saudi Arabia because the country will be included in the index next year at a weight that is significant compared to a lot of other countries. So it'll be in the top 7, 8 countries in the emerging market indices. So they have been paying a lot of attention to that and to the reforms. So most of the money that it has come in so far is U.S., U.K., and a little bit of Europe. But that's going to expand to more of continental Europe, more Canada, more Asia. It'll just take time. It's a process that takes some time.
You sounded very bullish on Saudi Arabia in the news conference. Where does that bullishness come from?
Well, I've been doing this for about 25 years, and I've seen many countries, many inclusions. I've seen many developments of derivative markets. We've been part of many of those. This has been very unique, to MSCI and to Tadawul and to the regulatory authorities in the country because they have been very much in a hurry. They have been listening intently to what are the requirements from MSCI and, more importantly, the requirements from the global institutional investment community to be part of that ecosystem of global investing. They have been adapting a lot of the regulations and the exchange to that very rapidly. Even in the last 3 years, there have been 3 changes to the regulatory environment in order to catch up to the demands and the requirements of investors. So we like what we see a great deal, and we don't see anything that is stopping it or slowing it down. If anything, it will be accelerating it. And how big could it be? This is a big country, relative to the region. This is a big market. It is obviously an oil producer with a lot of resources, a lot of human capital. It is currently a beacon of positive performance in markets, in emerging markets. So this country could grow quite a lot. And in addition to that, if you make it a regional exchange and a global exchange with the potential IPO of Aramco, the sky's the limit.
You mentioned Aramco, so let's go there. We understand it's been shelved, it's been put on the side. Do you think that undermines confidence in the plans here if it is shelved?
Not at all. I think that the interest in Saudi Arabia, it's already prevalent because obviously the inclusion into the indices and because of the opening up of the country and the companies that already exist here, there will be diversification, for many of the other, compared to the many other companies in emerging market investing. So now, obviously, Aramco will add to that, but I don't think it will detract from it. I think even if Aramco weren't to happen, which every indication is that it will happen, as far as we know, even without it, it will be a perfectly viable and acceptable market in the world.
You said this feels like a country in a hurry. If I was to say to you, developing business with Tadawul versus, for example, China versus Korea, as you say, you've done this for 25 years. Talk to me about the level of experience that you've had with Tadawul.
Well, I think what has been very positive, not just Tadawul, but the CMA, or the various ministries, all the way to the royal court, is that one, there is one story, there is one unified script that everyone is working on. There is one unified plan. There is no different agendas. There is no contradictory agenda. There is one, and everyone is working towards that. So you go to all these places, and that's what you hear. Secondly, they're listening very intently to what is it that are the needs of investors, and they're giving that to them to make sure that they become an attractive market. Three, they recognize that the competition for capital in the world is intense, and it's not just a question of building something and waiting for people to come. They are constantly on the road talking to investors, marketing what they do. The companies are doing that, so that is very unique in the world.
Finally, those are all the good news stories. One can't avoid the fact that there has been a bumpy ride over the summer in terms of news flow geopolitically. What is the biggest concern of global investors when you talk to them about Saudi?
I think there's always clearly in the back of investors the issues, geopolitical issues. I mean but that's everywhere in the world. I mean the geopolitical issues in China, in Korea, everywhere in the world that you invest in, right? So even in America nowadays, right, there are geopolitical and trade issues, that to contend with. So that's part and course of investing. I think it's more an issue of the continued development of the market. As you know, in many other places, once a country gets to index inclusion, they don't do much more beyond that, and therefore the markets go flat, and not a lot of that happens after that. So they are intent in not doing that. They're intent on bringing new IPOs into the market, whether it's state-owned companies or private companies from the country, from the region. They're looking at doing depository receipts and all of that. They are very conscious that this is a souk, and the souk needs to merchandise, to make it attractive, and that's what they're focused on.
Henry, thank you so much for joining us. Henry Fernandez, Chairman and CEO at MSCI.